All right, MSA U12’s. We're going into a nice little GS training block, and I thought it'd be a good time to review some of the tactics and some of the terminology. Some of these terminologies, words that some of our older kids, U14s and above, have been using, but probably time to start getting used to that, those words. So let's check out. We're going to have Henrik Kristofferson, one of the best GS skiers in the world, help us out with a little demo. So he is on some big skis, long skis, 30-meter, and this is really starting off kind of slow and really offset. So, but he's going to demonstrate one thing we're talking about is having a nice high line. You look at him bringing what do we call turn shape back to the pole, right? His turn is going to be well above the pole, and he's going to finish right on the gate with direction done. So first off, some terminology. Rise line. We've talked about this, that imaginary line drawn straight up from the pole up the hill. Fall line, well, that's usually if you roll a ball down the hill, what path it's going to take. But generally speaking, we kind of call the fall line, right here, because typically we want to pressure the skis in the fall line right there. Ideally, you want to pressure maybe from when we intersect rise line through fall line right there. So we talk about, I'm sure you've been told in your career, you got to turn early. Well, you do, but it's a little bit misleading, because you can turn too early, right? Look at him here. So here he comes across, and has he started turning yet? No, not yet. Not yet. Not yet. Now, what if he started turning early? What if he started turning now? He'd end up going kind of down towards this gate, right? And all of a sudden he'd have no room to turn anymore. So he'd end up having to go kind of double turn. He'd end up really going like this and being too low, and then having to turn well below the gate. So he'd be late. Right now, he's being patient. He gets himself out to rise line. So generally speaking, we want to start our turn when we intersect rise line. And if it's offset, you have to have your skis pointing out and away pretty far, allowing to bring shape back to the pole. So he really gets himself outside rise line. He's past rise line because it's so offset. But he finishes his turn right there. So we really want to finish our turn early, as opposed to necessarily starting it real early. So rule number one is we want to be patient, get out to rise line before starting our turn. So in other words, we want to be turning above the gate. You've heard us talk about that a lot, turning above the gate. Some of the U14s and above talk about having their apex above the gate when it's steep and offset. And, the apex is going to be where kind of the belly of the turn, or where the most turn direction happens. So, if this is your turn, the apex is going to be right here. So we're going to think about apex above the gate above the panel in GS when it's steep and offset. Now, when it flattens out or gets straighter, we can certainly try to bring our apex down to the panel. We can go a little straighter at it, and it's more going to be like half our turn below, half our turn above and half our turn below the gate. But you got to be looking ahead, because why does Henrik give himself this outside rise line and really be patient and turn well above it? Because that next gate is offset. So you really can't tell how to approach this gate here unless you knew where the next one is. So we got to be looking 2 gates ahead. If the following gate is offset quite a bit, we got to set up more, meaning giving ourselves more room above the gate in the rise line, and that's another word. That's called elevation. So the more offset the course is, the more room we have to intersect rise line above the panel, and again, that's give yourself more elevation. All right, so we got to be looking ahead. But when we're talking about tactics here, we also look at his technique. I mean, look at that, picture perfect, nice level shoulders. He's got a long outside leg and a short inside leg. He's got his hands driving forward, and he's really, you can see the bend of the outside ski. He's on his outside ski right there. Finishes his turn with direction done right at the panel. And where does he head off to? Does he head off to the next gate? No. He's going to head off to where he needs to make that next turn, where his apex is. All right, so he went back up here. You can see he's not heading right to the gate. He's heading where he wants to be able to make that turn, or at least start that turn. So what happens when the course maybe straightens out and we can't really see here, but here all of a sudden he doesn't give himself as much room above the panel where he intersected rise line. Rise line, again, that imaginary line drawn up from the hill. So there's not as much elevation there or space above. That has to mean, because he looked ahead, the next gate is straighter. So he didn't have to set up as much. And he also didn't have his skis pointing out and away from the pole as much. If it was really offset afterwards, he'd be further up here somewhere, and his skis be pointing out here and bringing a lot of turn shape back. Didn't need it here because he looked ahead, and he was able to, he knew that the course was straightening out a bit. Again, a nice example of being patient. He came through here, got himself above the gate and rise line, started his turn, bring shape back to the pole, drove his hands forward, level shoulders, long outside leg, short inside leg. He's really balanced over the outside ski. Another thing he does is he gives himself space or room at the panel for a strong angulated position. I mean, he wants to produce these kind of angles of the upper and lower body, nice upper and lower body separation. But look at how far his outside or downhill foot is from the panel. He had to give himself that room in order to drop the hip in order to produce those angles. So give yourself some room at the panel and allow you to get some nice angles. Again, he's looking ahead. Look how far he goes. He's way past rise line. Right, rise line's going to be over here somewhere, and he's got himself outside rise line, past rise line, bringing turn shape back to the pole, taking a nice high line. And same here. I mean, obviously the next blue gate, which you can't see, must be quite offset, because look at the amount of elevation he gave himself all the way to here. His skis are pointing out and away from the panel, right? They're pointing out there right now when he intersects rise line, allowing him to bring nice turn shape back. Really staying ahead of the course, being above it. All right, so those are some of the concepts. So again, make sure we're looking at least 2 gates ahead, because you don't know how to approach the next gate without knowing where the gate after is. If it's steep and offset, you need to give yourself more room or elevation above the panel and intersect rise line with our skis pointing further out and away from the panel. The general rule is be patient. Start your turn when you get to rise line. That way your turn will be, above the gate, apex above the gate. If it straightens out or flattens out, you can drop your apex down to the panel. Make sure you give yourself room at the panel for a strong angulated position. And also, if you turn too early, you will be late. A lot of stuff I just talked about here. We'll talk about it really on the hill, but try to watch this maybe a couple times so you can maybe get some of these concepts, and we'll then review it on the hill.